Kierra Box. I'm 18, and I wasn't planning on beginning by saying what Hands Up Peace was, because I've got a bit smart recently and kind of assumed everyone knows. But then our chair today didn't have a clue who we were, so I put that in. But then our other chair has now explained what I do, so I'm thinking of taking it back out. But just to kind of clarify, basically Hands Up for Peace was an organisation set up by 3 of us when we were 17. We thought about just putting a banner on a bridge over the Thames with a message against war. And we were thinking, what would be a young person's message against war? And we were thinking, how are young people told to vote? How do we make our voices heard? And the way we thought that we are generally told to make our voices heard in school is put your hand up. Put your hand up if you want to do this. Put your hand up if you believe in this. Put your hand up to vote. So we thought, what are we putting our hands up for? How are we going to get ourselves noticed? We're going to put our hands up for peace. And so that was going to be the message on our banner. And then we began thinking, well, our argument in this is that Blair's going to war and he's the only one that wants to, and it's undemocratic. How can our protest be democratic? How can we ensure that it's not just us putting up a banner saying our hands are up for peace and not representing all the other young people in the country? We don't know what their hands are up for. We don't know what they're thinking. So we decided to find out. We circulated an email. We started a website. We spread things through word of mouth. We went on the protests and the demos at the beginning. And basically, we just told people that if they had a message of peace, they should draw around their hand, they should cut it out on a piece of paper, they should decorate it, and most importantly, they should write their message for peace on their hand, their argument against war. Now, these range from, I don't like war, to peace is best, to a hand filled with an essay about the causes of war, why the war was for oil, and why they felt the war was economically, socially and morally inviable. And so basically we had a whole range of things. We did put them up in Parliament Square. We aimed for 2,000. In the month before war broke out, we began collecting them. We actually collected 3,000. More kept coming in, even after the war had finished. And the response is so good, we're actually now a different organisation. We're called Hands Up for ... So that young people now contact us whenever there's an issue they're upset about. At the moment, we're looking at nuclear war and the new arms race and asking young people to put their hands up for their views on nuclear weapons. So basically, what I'm here today to say is I was looking on the UN website before I came here, and the opening line of the introduction to the UN Decade for a Culture of Peace, quote, state, "Today, more than ever, the concept of a culture of peace provides the way to confront emerging threats and challenges." That's what the UN says. But clearly our leader, and many other leaders around the world who I could name, but I'm sure everyone can think of them themselves, they don't think of that as a statement which should cloud their judgment. To them, the way forward is clear, and it is war. But to me, and most of my generation, the way forward is clear, and it is peace. And clearly this is something that needs to be addressed because this message isn't getting through to the people who are making the decisions. When we took action in Iraq, when Israel and also Palestine again used violence to try and get their point across or to solve their problems, when our government lays down plans to develop a new generation of nuclear weapons, again and again, my generation repeat to ourselves, a culture of peace provides the way to confront these emerging threats and challenges. One of the most moving places I visited as a teenager was a small graveyard in France on a history school trip for GCSE. We were looking at the Somme, but on our way to the Somme, we stopped at a small graveyard, no more than a couple of hundred graves. There were no huge rows of white headstones. There were no walls of names written around the side of the cemetery. There were just rows of small crosses. And my memory of that graveyard just begins with one cross. And written on the cross on a small brass plaque was the word Inconnu, which I guessed and found out later meant unknown. And on the next cross there was another plaque, and again it said unknown. And again, and I walked through the graveyard for an hour because I didn't believe there could be a graveyard in which every single grave was unknown, 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 and there was not a single name in there. We did not know who these people were who'd laid their lives down for us. They were just unknown. And I don't believe that our government can not just continue to do this, but can continue to make more, even more exciting ways of making huger and huger sections of the population, not only killing them, but making them unknown in death. And as a young person who will be growing up in this century, I find it disturbing this is how I have to live. After World War I, and again after World War II, as has been said already today, we continued to say there should not be any more war. We can solve things through a culture of peace. And then the Cold War started. And so we carried on solving our problems through war or the threat of war, through violence or the threat of violence. I am one of the generation who will grow into adulthood with a new generation of nuclear weapons. Despite our government's commitment under the Non-Proliferation Treaty to, and I quote, accomplish the total elimination of our nuclear arsenal, we're now aiming to build up new supplies. Bunker busters, mini-nukes, non-strategic battlefield weapons. I'm ashamed that the lessons I learnt so easily that day in my GCSE history class are so hard for our Prime Minister and for other leaders around the world to learn. I'm ashamed that what the UN has stated so clearly, its aim for a culture of peace, is so misunderstood by our leaders today. In 1958, my mother walked on the Aldermaston March. We look back at the Cold War as if it's a time that we've now left far behind and the threat of nuclear war has now dissipated. And if this is so, why this year, in 2004, am I planning to walk in her footsteps? 2004 is the UN priority year for respect for all human rights. As part of the Decade of a Culture of Peace, this is this year's priority. But it seems that our leaders do not consider life or peaceful coexistence human rights which need to be protected. Next year, 2005, the Non-Proliferation Treaty is up for review, and I have little faith that we'll retain the current guidelines on non-proliferation, let alone move towards a more peaceful society. My generation are growing up with an inexorable movement towards more and more weapons, not of mass destruction, not WMD, but weapons of mass murder, of mass slaughter. And I think when it's put like that, it just doesn't sound as pretty. We sit there debating these acronyms, but what we're actually talking about is slaughter, hundreds of thousands of people who will forever be known as unknown. And it scares me to think of the world I might be bringing my children into. This isn't just the world I'm living in. It's not the world I'll be living in tomorrow. It's the world that I'll have to bring another generation into, and my generation will have to bring their generation of children into. And I hope that it will be a world in which we do finally adopt a culture of peace. We do finally respond to global challenges with peaceful solutions, and not one in which my children must once again march to Aldermaston and remember their dead only as unknown. We must challenge the idea that it is, as in the poem, brave and honourable to die for your country, and help our next generation to realise what our leaders haven't, that it is braver and far more honourable to live in and develop our world for today and for tomorrow and for our children. Thank you.
Very, very good.